Welcome to New England Maker Summit Virtual Track C, Manufacturing. Today, Marty Guay is our speaker. Marty is the Vice President of Business Development for Stanley Black & Decker, and previously, he was the President of Stanley Healthcare, a global business and operating division of Stanley Black & Decker. They supported safety, security, and operational efficiency for senior living organizations, hospitals, and healthcare systems. Prior to Stanley Healthcare, Marty was a senior leader at Stanley Security, the second largest global provider of electronic security. He served as the President of Integrated Systems, as well as the Vice President of Sales and Operations for North America. He looks to create value-driven opportunities by working with startups, innovation ecosystems, and the entrepreneurial community. And here's Marty.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be here. And I want to thank Deborah and her team for really making this all possible to come to you virtually and discuss what Stanley Black & Decker is doing with regard to advanced manufacturing and how we're looking to skill up our workforce. But I thought it would be really productive and helpful as we look at this journey to give you a little insight inside of Stanley Black & Decker, how we view our people, how we view the world, and how we view the accelerating pace of change in the world. Right now, Stanley Black & Decker is a $14 billion global industrial, which really serves three major markets. One, our global tools and storage division. We are the top global tools and storage company in the world. So by proxy, our tools make the world. Our security division, which is made up of electronic security, automatic doors, and healthcare, is a better than $2 billion division. And then we have an industrial division, which makes fasteners, infrastructure, hydraulics. We serve the oil and gas business. It's a really meaningful entity, which really also serves those who make the world. For those who make the world is our purpose. And you'll see that manifested through the discussion. Approximately 60,000 employees in the world. We operate 140 facilities in 60 countries. Our tools are sold every second we sell 10 tools. We make 500,000 different products. Some interesting innovation perspectives. We have 13,000 registered patents. And we have a very vibrant digital marketing and digital branding strategy and leadership initiative. Jim Lurie, our CEO, has set forth three real pillars to Stanley Black & Decker's performance. One is around top quartile performance. Our share price is a proxy for that. So we look at our peers like Honeywell and Illinois Tool Works and GE and Danaher for that, and we do perform in the top quartile. The second pillar of our strategy is that we want to be known as one of the world's great innovative companies, full stop, not just one of the world's most industrial innovative companies, but most innovative. And I'm going to share with you some of our innovation ecosystem because it sets forth how we view our future, how we view the world that we live in, and how that affects workforce. And the third tenet of our strategy is around corporate social responsibility. And that's manifested in our diversity and inclusion. It's manifested in our zero waste to landfill strategy. All of our packaging will be biodegradable, recyclable, or reusable by 2025. We'll be carbon neutral by 2030. So there's a whole host of initiatives around that. And some of our big swing initiatives is that we're looking to impact the lives of 500 million people globally by 2030. We are proud to be part of the Connecticut ecosystem, especially around advanced manufacturing. We've got great leadership in the state. Deborah Sasiski in our Makerspace, our Connecticut Makerspace is one of those people, but we also have Chris DiPentima over at CBIA, Eric Brown at CMC, Ron Angelo at CCAT. We've got Paul Murphy at ACM. We've got Jamie in New Haven. So for us, working with the city, the state, Metro Hartford Alliance, we believe that we are a meaningful part of this ecosystem, and we look to maintain leadership to help each other. As we look at our innovation, we believe that innovation drives economic development and drives corporate growth, which then drives societal impact in a very positive way. So innovation is one of the long poles in our tent, and we've been recognized at Stanley Black & Decker as one of those innovative companies that's really impacting the world. And we also believe that our diversity and inclusion as a company helps drive our innovation. So we have diversity of people from different backgrounds, from different places, and we also focus on cognitive diversity. We focus on people that think differently because we're here to break the mold. We have a expression inside: be bold and break the mold, and you need to do that with different people. So really, it takes everybody to do this. Everybody in the company is important, no matter where they're from, no matter what background, educational or personal. But it really is an important part of our strategy, and we believe it's one of the successful drivers around our innovation. We are all over the world. We have, factories in China. We have Asia, all over Asia, South America, Europe, North America, customers everywhere, supply chains everywhere. So it really takes an inclusive strategy to drive success. I just want to give context to our innovation ecosystem. So I have responsibility for our Stanley plus Techstars Accelerator. We curate 10 startups from around the world in Hartford at One Constitution Plaza. And this innovation really impacts this new collar workforce. As we look at our workforce, know what's coming in the future is going to change because we see what's coming early around innovation. So we had 10 companies come in 2018 around additive manufacturing, which is, as many know, additive manufacturing is 3D printing for manufacturing. Companies from Ukraine, Ireland, Israel, Canada, and the US. An amazing group of people working on material science, software, hardware, metals, polymers, different types of plastics. Really just a rich, diverse group, and we really got a lot out of that cohort. Last year, we extended that to not only additive manufacturing, but also eco-friendly. So we brought in companies with bio-based lubricants, or companies, we had a company from India making packaging and pulp from crop waste, really saving the emissions of CO2 into the environment. Packaging, boxing companies, again, 3D printing companies. This year, our cohort starts in January. Its focus is on artificial intelligence in advanced manufacturing. That's a mouthful, but it's a super important initiative for us, and I'll go through the importance of AI. And in this, you're going to see a lot of technology, a lot of innovation, a lot of acceleration of change, and the workforce needs to adjust to this. And that's why we believe at Stanley Black & Decker that Connecticut, Hartford, the central Connecticut area is so well positioned for the future of advanced manufacturing, because we have a very intelligent workforce that that is properly skilled, and people will benefit from these skill sets. We also, through our innovation ecosystem, have extended into other, through our Techstars Accelerator to other corporates. And you see some examples on the bottom of your screen. This is illustrative. It certainly is not exhaustive, but you see, strong relationships with MIT, with UConn. We have a relationship with Greentown Labs. For those who don't know Greentown, they're in the Boston area, right in between Harvard and MIT. It's the largest clean tech, climate tech startup center in North America, probably the world. An amazing group of companies there. They've got wet labs. They're working on chemistry and science and really bringing innovation. New lab in Brooklyn, in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, is another key relationship we have. And then we've made, through this Hartford-based accelerator, a lot of relationships with Ford, particularly Ford X, their innovation arm, Xerox around PARC. PARC is the Palo Alto Research Center, with a rich history of innovation. Some may remember that the mouse, the computer mouse, was invented there, and they sold it to Steve Jobs 40 years ago for a very small price. But a lot of innovation coming out of there. SAP, big global software company. BASF, we're doing some work with them around sustainable packaging. Boeing, their Horizon innovation arm, and Unilever's ventures arm. All these people have been to Hartford. All these groups have been to Hartford. And I could probably name not just these 10 or so, but another 40 to 50 that have come to Hartford from around the world to look at the innovation. Now, as an advanced manufacturer, this is just one component of our innovation ecosystem. And as you can imagine, these innovations will be then stepping into our business and into our supply chain and into our production and into our customer experience. So a lot of change coming. And as the new collar workforce gets prepared, we believe one of the most important skills people can have is the ability to learn. And the ability to be curious will foster the ability to learn. As we we talked about AI and advanced manufacturing. We want to use that artificial intelligence for upskilling. We're working with NC State on this, UMass with the National Science Foundation, UNC. We're working with the Business Higher Education Forum in Washington, D.C. But AI also goes right into the heart and the core of manufacturing, for operations, for robotics, for additive manufacturing, for sensors and analytics. So there is a massive amount of capital and technology coming into manufacturing. Right now, globally, about $200 billion has been spent on these advanced manufacturing technologies into the manufacturing value chain, and we're just getting started. About half of that is outside the U.S., half of that is inside the U.S. There are some industries that have done this well and are way ahead. You can think of that really are using technology to do a lot of manufacturing, but others need to catch up. Again, this is our focus of our accelerator that's coming to Hartford at the end of January. We are sourcing those companies right now, and those companies will be from around the world working on AI and advanced manufacturing. If people want to be mentors in this program for this cohort, which will be in Hartford from end of January through the middle of April, it's going to be a virtual accelerator, which we expect the world to stay virtual for a bit, but we have to learn how to innovate virtually. So this is a big piece of our future. The other thing that we do at Stanley Black & Decker, and you can see all these investments, is that we have, like many other companies, a corporate venture group. And corporate venture groups are all over large companies. Most large companies have one. They may invest separately through a separate entity or right off the balance sheet. But what this will show you is where we have interest in new technologies, new startups, taking minority investments in small companies who are working on things that are important for us, whether it's drones in our security business, or sensors in our construction technology segment, or software in a whole host of segments. This is really important for us. So as you look at the new workforce coming in, massive change coming. There's an expression that says the world is not going to be as slow as it is today. Now, pre-COVID, that would make more sense. In some ways, the world seems pretty slow and fast at the same time with COVID, but the pace of change is unbelievable when you step back. When you look at the economy, if this pandemic came 20 years ago without cell phone or Zoom technologies, or without overnight delivery services, it would be a whole different world. But all those things actually made the ability to operate fairly seamless. I know there's a psychology around working remotely and the ability to be successful, but right now it's to be able to work remotely is not only possible and probable, it's actually somewhat productive. In some ways, it's overproductive because people are working maybe a little too much because they don't have to commute and they can go to work all the time. But suffice to say, the world is actually moving very rapidly through this COVID, and it's all because of the digital economy. So manufacturing is going through that acceleration. Industry 4.0, quite simply, is the digitization of manufacturing, and that change is only going to accelerate through this pandemic. The other thing we have in our innovation ecosystem is our Stanley X Center of Excellence in Palo Alto. And we establish partnerships and investments, and we have a whole core group of people there that are actually looking to disrupt our core around construction technology, digital manufacturing, and talent solutions. We're launching startups, and we have launched startups. But as I said, there's so much change going on that we have to be out in front trying to disrupt our own change and really not be the next Blockbuster, but the next Netflix. And we believe that the most agile, bold, and innovative organizations who have the most diverse set of talent and opportunities for all will be the winners in this process. Industry 4.0 enables the new collar workforce, and we have high expectations. At Stanley Black & Decker, we've taken an enterprise approach. And what I mean by that is we've looked at our entire ecosystem, those 140 locations around the world, whether they're factories or assembly centers or distribution centers, and really look to leverage trap value inside of those. So if we have somebody who's picking and placing things, how do we automate that through a collaborative robot, and then skill somebody up to manage a team of collaborative robots? These create better jobs. These create more opportunities for people to get into higher paying careers. And they also create productivity for the company that's permanent. Once you replace labor with capital, you get a permanent savings. And you don't really lose the jobs. I know there's a whole narrative around that, but we don't see that. In fact, we think that the jobs just get better. So with 60,000 people in our organization, we are actually looking to upskill 30,000 people over the next 10 years. Those will be new jobs, a lot of the same people in new jobs, but it's really quite a it's quite an opportunity for a lot of people, and it's also, again, getting back to what I said earlier, it's quite an opportunity for Connecticut, because in the 1940s and 50s, after the war, a lot of jobs started leaving Connecticut for the Carolinas, the Mid-Atlantic, because the hands were cheaper. Labor was higher in the Northeast. And then those jobs in the 80s and 90s left the Mid-Atlantic and went to Mexico, because NAFTA said, well, if you're going to pay a minimum wage and have certain kinds of environmental protections for your production, we can move jobs to Mexico. A lot of jobs left the US permanently. And then when China came in the World Trade Organization in 2000, those jobs, a lot of jobs left the US and Mexico and went to China. But now technology has given us an edge, and you're going to see a massive reshoring of jobs, because for people to manage technology, the US, and particularly the Northeast, has a labor pool that is skilled in this. These are not dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs anymore. This new collar workforce is high tech. It's like going into a hospital and operating machinery for tests, and these are really good jobs. I'll never forget a conversation I had with Bob Ledoux, the former president of Pratt & Whitney, who's a terrific gentleman. And he said to me, Marty, we're looking for welders who can do software analytics and diagnostics. And I thought that was a really good way to capture that our manufacturing will continue to be making things, but people will need to be more analytical, higher skilled, better paying, better benefits, better career progression, but they'll be using a lot of what's in their head instead of what's in their hands to build the future. So with that, the way we look at this is we have our Center of Excellence. We call our Manufactory 4.0, which is in Hartford. Taking an enterprise approach, we got a big team of people working on analytics, automation, digital apps, connected factory, factory of the future, industrial IoT, cell automation. And we really work with our plant managers, our plant champions, and work together to enable these changes. Some are point solutions. It may be, replacing forklifts with autonomous vehicles. It may be working through a whole lot of non-value created processes and implementing technology and value to really scale up performance and productivity. Productivity is one of the necessary drivers in life to allow profits to reinvest back in people, companies, and communities. So without, performance, we're not competitive. But we do believe that technology is where the U.S. and particularly Connecticut can win. So this new collar workforce is extremely important for us. But to get there, we're going to need the ecosystem, the companies in manufacturing, to really up their game and implement technology to enable their productivity and performance. Couple of use cases of this. We've deployed, analytics in Fort Mill, South Carolina. We do a lot of our DeWalt power tools there, and we're able to see, while deploying all of this software that's connected to production data, a 3-month rollout with an 18-month payback. And as I said earlier, that payback survives into perpetuity. In Gießen, Germany, we use mobile robots to really improve productivity and to avoid any type of accidents. Gießen is our European center for our engineered fastening business. Our engineered fasteners go into Audis and Porsches and BMWs and Volkswagens. Cars are held together with fasteners now. It's not steel that's welded, it's plastic and aluminum that's attached, or it's aluminum attached to aluminum. And as you know, we can't weld aluminum yet. But in these big, major, important plants, we find ways to improve productivity. And then our Decatur, Alabama site, we're using collaborative robots, which are called cobots. So we use them to do routine type of things. If people are working on things that are very repetitive and routine, we actually automate that through a collaborative robot. We program it, and we have that person manage a multiple of those robots and really make sure that we're getting the right throughput, the right efficiency, the right productivity, the right service, and everything else. So deploying scalable solutions and building momentum. We talked earlier about job creation or job loss through this new collar workforce. Right now, $2.5 trillion in manufacturing GDP is at risk because they're unfilled jobs. This information is pre-COVID, and I know at that time there was approximately, I think in Connecticut, there was 5,000 to 10,000 open jobs in advanced manufacturing. We know the pandemic has ruffled all those assumptions, but when the economy starts to settle back to its new normal, those jobs will come back. Aviation will come back. Production will come back. So there are a lot of open jobs. And what we saw in the U.S. from PCs, people thought personal computers would eliminate jobs. They did, about 3.5 million, but they created almost 20 million jobs. So you can see a net increase of almost 16 million jobs. We do a lot of research on job creation or job elimination, because people are our most important asset at Stanley Black & Decker and in the society as a whole. And what we saw through this is that robotics actually creates more jobs for the company that deploy them than the companies that don't. Jobs change, but the number of workers actually does not. So we take away the dull, dirty, and dangerous. People stop working with their hands as much. They work with their heads. And this new collar workforce needs to be digitally literate, in some cases digitally fluent in areas of importance, so that they can manage those jobs. I put this roadmap in. Our Chief Technology Officer, Dr. Mark Maybury, wrote it. This is a 10-year view of artificial intelligence in manufacturing from 2020 through 2030. This was presented at Stanford University, and you can see the amount of importance and complexity. You may not be able to see it, but you can get this paper online. It's about 4 or 5 pages, and I'd recommend people who haven't read it to read it, because it really allows you to see what's going on in artificial intelligence, because it's, we believe, one of the major, massive secular drivers in the next 10 to 20 years is going to be AI and machine learning. I've added in some logos here, like Rockwell and Foghorn and SICK Technologies, and different people that we work with. But again, this is foundational to the new collar workforce. This shows you where that paper is, AI in manufacturing.wixsite.com symposium, and it's written in simple English, but you really will get a perspective on how the work, and by corollary the workforce, will change. With all that, then we engage with an external ecosystem, and this is just some of the people that we work with to incorporate technology and capabilities from our external partnerships back into our core business. And I'll just focus on cobots and robotics. We're working with Ready Robotics, Fetch Robotics, Soft Robotics, Boston Dynamics, MIR, Omron, Fanuc, Epson, Universal. I mean, we work with them all because they all have discrete applications and they all have value and importance. Again, this shows you the importance of technology for the future of manufacturing and the importance of our workforce to be able to work with this technology. We need people that have the ability to learn and who are curious, and we're gonna reskill them, which means they're gonna have to unlearn what they learned and relearn new things. And in 5 to 10 years, I would expect the same thing to happen. I was talking to a group earlier in the week who were finishing up college, and what we learned in I'll assume that I'm older than some on the call, but what I learned in college really wasn't apropos to what I'm doing now, because everything's changed so much. And I would say that the people that win are the people that can adapt the best to change. That's a very Darwinian conclusion, but it's actually very much correct. And I think most of us can. We just need to be open to that. So this sets forth what we have set forth inside of Stanley Black & Decker, which is a lifelong learning strategy. So we have set this journey forth last year and are implementing it around all these different types of initiatives. But lifelong learning is going to become the most important thing that we can embed into our own personal calculus, into our businesses and into our ecosystem to transform businesses, to get professional development. The future of work will change. The experiences will change. The career mappings will change. Leadership principles change when things change. We're in the middle of this virtual workforce, and I think there's probably going to be about 20 to 25% of the people that don't fully make it back to the office in the future. How do we manage those people? How do we become good leaders for people that are remote? How do we do professional development? How do we teach people how to read body language through a Zoom call? I don't know, but these are the types of things that we're going to have to wrestle with going forward. And how do we keep energy and well-being levels up for people that really get frustrated without having the constant or the routine interaction with people. The levels of that upskilling and reskilling will hit everything on the shop floor. People will be working alongside technology. They'll be troubleshooting with that technology. They will be live with figuring things out. It won't be a production line where if something goes wrong, the line stops and you got to wait for the foreman or the technician to come in. Everyone there is a technician. Everyone there is a foreman. And the ability to really troubleshoot, to Bob Ledoux's at Pratt & Whitney's perspective, how does the welder understand software diagnostics? Because that's what they're operating now. For us, at Stanley Black & Decker, we've gotten to initiative with the National Science Foundation and the University of Massachusetts Amherst to really work on this continuum of how this future of work will change and how this new collar workforce will adjust to this. There'll be different credentials. We believe that skills and credentials will be as or more important than knowledge and degrees. Credentials will become faster and they'll be stackable. So people will need to learn a lot of different pieces that'll all come together. I met with somebody in the cybersecurity field around this credentialing type of strategy, and we were talking, and he said, Marty, we believe in credentialing for cyber over university degrees, because the books that they're teaching in the university, those books were written 3 years ago, 2 years ago. The stuff we're teaching real time is real time. When you have the pace of change accelerating, and change is accelerating, you have to have new learning models, and you have to have different type of content delivery systems, smaller, faster bites. So more to come on upskilling and reskilling. The whole world is going through this, but when you have change in a certain industry like advanced manufacturing that's accelerating, this becomes really, really important. The other thing we're working on inside of Stanley Black & Decker is creating a vocational leadership program. So we're working on vocations and trades for people that can get skilled up. Years ago, vocational skills were something important. There was a fork in the road at 8th grade or 9th grade that some kids went to the vocation tech school. Some kids stayed in the high school and worked in the auto body shop or the welding shop or the machine shop. All those kind of went away, and they lost their importance because I don't think they were prestigious. College education became more prestigious than vocational education. Not sure how that happened. It did. And what happened is schools K through 12 became preparatory places for college careers. In a lot of ways, we need to make schools preparatory places for careers, not just colleges. We need to solve for both because not everyone's going to go to college, and not everyone needs to go to college. And as we see with the amount of structural inefficiencies with the cost versus return, this is all being rethought. But we're taking a lead on this vocational leadership initiative inside of Stanley Black & Decker. The other thing that we're working on is we've partnered up with Deepao, which is a startup, some entrepreneurs out of Siemens, and they are learning how to go to the skilled trades and really the shop room floor and create tribal knowledge, places to capture process, places to capture information. This has been a really interesting technology for us. We believe it's transformational, and we believe in places like Connecticut, which has a rich success in places in manufacturing, high-end, high-tech manufacturing with small companies, and a silver tsunami of older people retiring. This is exactly the kind of technology that can maintain a technological edge for companies. So Dpow is something that we believe in. It really is a software tool to capture all that tribal knowledge in process on the shop room floor, and it allows that to be passed on and organized through artificial intelligence in a really good way. So you don't have to wait for, Fred goes on vacation, he's the only one who knows how to do something. That all goes away as it should. That knowledge should stay back, and that know-how should be captured in the workflow, in the AI tool. We took some learnings from operation and some pilots with Deepao, and what we learned is that the connectivity and devices need to be part of jobs. People have to have technology to connect with their job, and those are through applications. The other thing we learned is that without a site champion, when you're going through technology and technology change in this new collar workforce, you don't get there as fast, or you don't get there at all. HR has to be involved to help communicate. Environmental health and safety needs to help with that too. But what's really important is take these trainings and these operations and build them into skill sets and grow mindsets. We see a performance improvement. We see a savings and reduction in time. So again, this new collar workforce needs to be open to change, needs to grab the tools, be part of the whole new process. hiding information or protecting information to be inexpendable makes you expendable, because what's most important is to take that knowledge and share it across the ecosystem. And I want to conclude with, you know, the future with Stanley Black & Decker around the new collar workforce is really to connect our employees, our future employees, that workforce that needs to be reskilled and upskilled, with an easy and simplified learning experience to build the skills that the business needs and the customers expect, and to really enable people to be part of this. If people are not, I would say people are going to become even more important over time, because we're enabling them with the technology. They're not just doing a picking and placing that anybody can do. They're actually responsible for leveraging our capital investments, which are the technology inside of manufacturing. So this creates better jobs. Better jobs creates people who are more engaged with their communities, who give back, who are able to come to work and give more. So it's a virtuous flywheel that we really believe in. People make the difference. And, you know, going back to my opening comments, we believe that performance, innovation, and corporate social responsibility, diversity, inclusion, and people really are the right pillars to make all this happen. So that's the formal part of my presentation. I think there are 15 to 20 minutes open for questions.
All right. Can you hear me, Marty?
I can hear you. Can you see me?
Yes, I can. My name is Dave Christensen. I'm co-chair of the board of trustees here for MakerspaceCT with Jim Fuller. So thank you very much for sharing insight into what Stanley's been doing. I just want to remind everyone, if you have questions for Marty, you can certainly send them in, and we can give him some comment. So Marty, just a bunch of questions kind of came into my mind as I was listening to you talk. I'm not sure, some of them are probably you won't be able to answer, but one of the things that occurred to me was, we were talking about welders who were software programmers. I guess the question is, are they a welder first or are they a software programmer first? Because to be a good welder could take years of training and different experiences with different materials in order to properly fabricate things.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think they're welders first, and I think they will be welders. But the technology that's given to them is going to be very software intensive, and they're going to need to rely on that software to enable world-class welds. So, they're going to need to interact with the tools that they have. I don't think that, I think in any job anywhere, digital skills will be just the requirement. Whether you are, working at a fulfillment center, or you're working at a hospital, or you're working in a manufacturing site, you're going to be interacting with digital. And I think that the world got bifurcated with COVID. Those who are working with digital or on digital or through digital actually made it through the other side. Those that were disconnected from digital or were manual in some ways really didn't. I mean, they really, so as many people as we can get onto the digital world, I think the better off we're going to be. But we're betting that the whole workforce needs to be on it. They're going to be using tools and different things, whether they're simplified tools that land on a PDA, or whether they're digital Gemba boards on a floor of a factory. They just need to speak digital language.
Right. So I guess right now it's kind of an interesting time, because right now you do have a lot of people say, we'll just keep using welding as an example, because it's a highly skilled job that
right.
takes time to acquire. You have people that with those skills that you can now upscale, I think is the word you've used, into a more of a digital thing. going forward, you're probably still going to have post-secondary education processes in the welding then, so that they can get the welding skills first, though they probably mix those together. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. And I think impacts of productivity for the people that build welding equipment will be embedding software into it. All the people that are, we're setting up a nerve center in Hartford to connect 120 factories around the world into Hartford. So we can see on certain lines in the Czech Republic or Brazil or Vietnam, we can see our machines oil pressure. We can see vibration sensitivity. We can see preventive maintenance. We can see production throughput. We can see all the different analytics, and we can compare, the machines in Warrington, England, to the machines in Danbury, Connecticut, and say, what's off, what's on. But I mean, everything's going to get connected, and people are going to speak through the data. When somebody calls from Hartford to Warrington, England, they're going to say, this is what's going on. Somebody needs to understand what's going on.
Excellent. One of the other speakers earlier this morning was talking about a skills gap, and the specific example I think they gave was Medtronic, who was busing people over an hour out in Colorado to fulfill skilled jobs that they did. Is that something that you've run into, and is that what drove maybe some of these initiatives that you talked about earlier?
It didn't drive the initiatives. We believe that technology is going to replace routine labor, and it's going to create a knowledge worker. To the skills gap, I think societally we've done a poor job with training and skilling up people. I think that there is, I think the creator did a pretty good job at homogenizing talent all over the world. There are talented people all over the world, to include in the tough neighborhoods of Hartford, and there are people there that can be really great digital citizens, but they just haven't been skilled up that way. So instead, we focus time, and I'm not saying this is not an indictment on everybody. This is a societal reflection. We spend time trying to close achievement gaps of test scores around English and math between Greenwich and Bridgeport, and maybe we should teach people how to operate in this digital economy and get high-paying jobs and buy some houses in neighborhoods that they can fix up, right?
Right.
So I think it's all about our focus, and people, if you skill people up, they can learn. People are people. So that's my reflection.
Well, you pretty much just described our vision statement for MakerspaceCT, so I won't disagree with you at all. We did have a couple of questions come in. Troy asked, for champions, are you going to look for subject matter experts on the tools or machines, or someone who understands their workforce, their drivers, and life goals?
When you made champions, how would you interpret that, Dave?
I think it was going back to, you were mentioning earlier in your presentation that you had champions at site location champions.
Yes.
Maybe? Yeah. So is that person more of a subject matter expert, or more of what I would call a management expert, a people expert?
You're probably going to need both, but it really is a change management person who can really understand how to impact change into an environment. And I think that's really what we need. Somebody who's going to own it. You need somebody in the other end who's going to own the change and really take responsibility. And there's an expression in life which I think is correct. The only person in life who likes change is a wet baby, right? So most people are reluctant to go through it because you first need to change the psychology, and then you change the process, and people need to own it. But I think it's really the people that really own the champion's going to be somebody who owns it. It could actually be both people independently. It could be somebody who's on the floor that, leadership isn't always at the top in places. Sometimes people lead from the middle or lead from the bottom, and other people follow. It's a good question.
And he followed up with it. The question is, do you also believe in hiring outside of the industry? He believes that good champions and leaders are fluid in their expertise.
Yeah, I think this is cognitive diversity. I remember when I was a kid, Polaroid cameras were the biggest thing in the world, right? Everyone had one. It was like an Apple phone. And I remember my father, who had a few engineering degrees, he said, Marty, they're going to go out of business one day. I said, Dad, how would they go out of business? It's like the best company. I was like 10 years old, right? It's like the best company in the world. He goes, they're going to go out of business because they only hire engineers from MIT, which means that they're all taught the same thing by the same people. He says they ought to hire a few potato farmers from Iowa or Idaho to work for Polaroid. And they weren't even in trouble at the time. They were he says, you watch, that company's going to go out of business. And it did. It did. I think, as we go through this change, we all go through it. Sometimes it's a person we meet at a backyard barbecue who knows nothing about what we do. We tell them what we do and they say, maybe you should try this. And it's a great idea, right? I think the diversity of cognitive thinking, I think, is underweight in life. It's important.
Interesting point, because there are a lot of places that only hire from certain, or primarily hire from certain schools. So I never thought about it the way you just described it, but your dad was very wise.
Yeah.
So let's see if there were any other questions that came in. No. So the other question I had was, you talked about encouraging lifelong learning. From a practical standpoint, how do you see Stanley at least maybe doing that going forward? I'm having a hard time picturing how you would encourage your workforce to do that.
Well, it's a good question. We talk about it a lot and we say we're committed to it, so we put ourselves out there inside the company. The other thing we've engaged in is we get people, seats on Coursera or different. We have like 3 or 4 other online learning platforms. We've brought in 180 skills for the manufacturing technical side inside the company. So we have a lot of opportunity. So I've registered for courses on, Coursera or different applications. We've got a whole long strategy. It's actually pretty detailed around lifelong learning, but it's the notion that, when you have your review, this comes up in your review. What are you doing? You're responsible to improve your repertoire. Your team is responsible to help each other and what they're responsible for. Sometimes people are assigned different things, so it's pretty intentional, but also becomes something cultural, which becomes a default setting where people want to learn.
So you're actually providing them with maybe
access
to resources so they can.
And I think you need to,
obviously, but yeah,
you need to. And then what we can do is we can follow that. We can say, oh, these many people took courses and this is what they did, and you want to go out and you want to praise in public and maybe in private say to somebody, hey Dave, you've had an opportunity to do something. How can I help you remember your password, right?
Right. The credentialing, I've spent like 30 years. I'm a patent attorney, but I've spent 30 years in the manufacturing space in Connecticut. How is the credentialing rolling out? Is it being recognized? Do you do training internally? Because obviously your hiring managers need to know about it. Your HR people obviously probably know about it because they attend talks, but managers on the floor may not. Is that something you do? You've actively trained your management?
We have. I think internal credentialing is it goes on. It's somewhat easier, Dave. I mean, it's a great question, but it's somewhat easier because we're in a captive moment. We're inside of it's a big company, but we know what we need, and we use all the same words, and we know what the program is. Credentialing becomes a problem in between companies or between schools and everything else. So IBM is, with their P-Tech strategy, has spent time on this. Google is creating their own credentials. Facebook, there's a lot of companies that are creating credentials. What's going on right now in this credentialing world is that there's a real movement towards creating common credentials. So if I say that you are skilled up in digitally, that step one of Python, and you know how to program Python, we all know what we're talking about. Like, we all know what an engineering degree at UConn or MIT is, but a Python credential needs to mean one thing, right? So there's a whole movement around trying to figure that out, because people are seeing now that those credentials are actually, in a lot of jobs, are more important than a 4-year degree. So if you want to be a tech at Hartford Healthcare, a technician of equipment, you should need these 5 or 6 stackable credentials. Then you can operate the equipment and interface with the doctor or the nurse.
Right.
But it needs to be the same if you move to Buffalo and work at Buffalo General, right?
Right. And I suppose because you talked a lot about the increasing rate of change, that the different, knowing the difference between UConn engineering and, say, MIT engineering, both good schools, obviously there is a difference that occurred over hundreds of, or probably 100 or more years. You don't really have that benefit of time for Google versus IBM versus HP's credentialing systems. It's
starting, though. That is starting, and the accreditation process is what made the colleges and universities consistent. There's an accreditation standard, and that means something. But in stackable skills and credentials, not as much. But it's coming. It's actually, there's a lot of work being done on that as we speak.
All right, we have one last question. We're kind of running out of time. What metrics would you use, or do you use, or would you use to identify potential leadership, if applicable? How much trust do you put in the manager's opinions on the prospects of their workforce?
Just the last part of that sentence I didn't hear. The last sentence.
How much trust do you put in managers' opinions on the prospects of their workforce? So what I think that's getting to is you're going to be upskilling people. You must have to identify people that maybe have that ability or have the ability for certain things versus others.
Yeah, the person closest to the impact or the desired impact has the best set of eyes and ears, right? We may not agree with them, but that's reality. So we really get focused on what is real, what is out there, and those people are actually really important. And everybody manages and leads in a somewhat different fashion. So you have to respect that. But yeah, we listen to our people. They're on the tip of the spear, and they understand what's going on. We need them.
And do you have any metrics related to leadership on how you measure people?
We do. We do through our we do quarterly reviews inside the company. We used to do annual reviews. We went to quarterly because of the pace of change. So it's kind of a maybe smaller bites, and then the end of the year is a little bigger one. But there are quarterly touch points at a minimum for people to really understand where they're at, because things are changing so much, right?
Right. Okay. All right, I think that's all the questions we have. Is there anything else you want to share, Marty, before we?
I just want to thank you and MakerspaceCT and Devra and the whole team. You provide a great service and a great program for the state. And at Stanley Black & Decker, we appreciate it.
Great. Well, thank you, Marty. We appreciate your talk.
Support for the New England Maker Summit provided by our innovation partner, Stanley Black & Decker. Additional sponsors include the Rutledge Family Foundation, Mastercam, MPH Engineering LLC, CBIA, Ready CT, and Constep. Thank you for your support.